People always talk about Vegeta's strongest moments, the fights, the speeches, the power-ups, but they rarely talk about the moments where he's vulnerable, the moments where his pride isn't just a shield, but a wound. Vegeta's often misunderstood. Many reduce him to just his ego, this loud, angry warrior chasing power. But there is more to him. There always has been. In this video, I want to talk about that, about the weight Vegeta carries, about what it means when a warrior like him finally breaks. I think Vegeta is one of the most layered characters in Dragon Ball, and today, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about why this line matters, and why it still matters. How does a man who once conquered planets, who killed without hesitation, who laughed at the idea of mercy, becomes a man who fights for his son, apologizes to Gohan, and openly admits that someone else is stronger? That kind of change doesn't happen overnight. It happens piece by piece, through defeat, through love, through quiet realizations. And this moment, this single devastating line is one of those pieces. Now, there are plenty of moments in Dragon Ball where people claim Vegeta began to change. Namek, the Buu Saga, or Toyotaro gaslighting the entire fanbase on how Vegeta just learned empathy in Dragon Ball Super. But to me, it all comes back to this moment. This isn't just another chapter in Vegeta's arc, it's the quintessential turning point. The moment where the prideful warrior, the ruthless killer, finally cracked, and something far more human began to take shape. But to understand why this moment matters, to truly feel the weight of it, we have to look back. We have to remember how Vegeta was first introduced to us. A merciless Saiyan warrior with no attachments, a man who destroyed planets without hesitation, who killed his own comrade Nappa like he was trash. On Namek, he was consumed by vengeance and obsession, willing to do anything to get the Dragon Balls, to become a Super Saiyan. That pride, that rage, it was all he had. So when we see him break the way he does during the Cell Games, it's not just surprising, it's heartbreaking. Because it means everything that came before was leading to this exact moment. You know, there is a saying that goes like, we are the architects of our own downfall. And this downfall of Vegeta was the rise of his character development.
My pride and joy, the latent battle power within you is astonishing. It is you who will rule the universe.
Son of King Vegeta, heir to a proud and violent warrior race. Among the Saiyans, power was everything, and Vegeta had more of it than most, even as a child. In a society built on strength and status, there were ranks, the low-class warriors, disposable grunts sent to conquer weak planets, the mid-class, stronger, more seasoned, and then the elite, Saiyans born with overwhelming potential, destined to rise, destined to rule. Vegeta wasn't just part of the elite, he was the pinnacle of it, a prodigy, a prince. He was told from the beginning that he would surpass them all. However, destiny is a cruel thing when you're born into chains. Even as a child, Vegeta's life wasn't one of royalty, it was one of captivity. His planet, his people, his father, all bowed to a tyrant named Frieza. The promise of greatness was poisoned by the reality of slavery, and the boy who should have sat on a throne was instead used as a weapon. That kind of life doesn't forge compassion, it doesn't teach love, it teaches survival, coldness, control, and pride. And so, the boy became a blade, sharpened by expectation, hardened by humiliation. And with every battle, every conquest, Vegeta told himself the same thing. Power is everything. That's what Vegeta believed, that's what he had to believe. Emotions, compassion, regret, those were luxuries. Weaknesses. He didn't cry when planet Vegeta was destroyed, not because it meant nothing to him, but because acknowledging that pain would have meant admitting he cared. He didn't flinch when he killed Nappa, not because he hated him, but because showing mercy would have made him vulnerable. To survive, Vegeta turned his heart into stone, because in this world, vulnerability could only get you killed. And so, he wrapped himself in pride, in anger, in the belief that strength, raw, undeniable strength was the only thing that mattered. That's why, even years later, after finding a family, even after learning to protect instead of conquering, Majin Vegeta still believed that love had made him soft. Trauma. But hey, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Let's go back a little bit. For years, Vegeta believed there was a natural order to the universe, that the strong rose above the weak, that bloodline dictated worth, and as the son of the king, the prince of all Saiyans, he believed no one stood above him. Well, at least when it comes to the Saiyans. But belief is a fragile thing when it's never been challenged, and fate was about to test his, not against Frieza, not against gods, but on a backwater planet light years away from anything he called home. Earth, a world with no throne, no legacy, no warriors worthy of his name, and yet, it was there that everything would be questioned. His pride, his purpose, his power, all of it. He didn't know it yet, but the man he was about to fight would become the center of his universe, a rival who would haunt him, humble him, and ultimately define him.
Me, a warrior elite. In my fingertips, I hold the power to destroy entire worlds. I am a Saiyan of royal blood, the last of my kind, and on my shoulders rests the glory of an extinct warrior race. Whole civilizations once trembled at the sound of my name, but you didn't, did you, Kakarot? And at your hands, your common hands, my honor and my pride, the foundations upon which I have always stood, began to crumble at my feet. It was at your hands that I suffered my first great humiliation, toppled by a piece of low-level trash.
Kakarot, the low-class Saiyan who stands face to face against the elite, the same Saiyan that was sent to Earth as a baby, a reject, a mistake. From Vegeta's eyes, through his twisted royal lens, Goku was supposed to be nothing. He should have bowed before him or died trying. But he didn't. Where Vegeta fought with rage, Goku fought with resolve. Where Vegeta sought control, Goku trusted his friends. Where Vegeta was born to rule, Goku chose to protect. And that contradiction, that impossible contradiction, broke something inside of him. Because for all his strength, all his pride, all his power, Goku still stood toe-to-toe with him. And worse, he earned his respect. He didn't want a rival, but as he drifted away from Earth, wounded and humiliated, he realized he had one. And that changed everything. This wasn't just a battle between two men, it was a battle between two worlds. Nature versus nurture, bloodline versus choice, pride versus purpose. While he didn't lose the fight, he lost control. Control over the narrative that has shaped his entire life. Control over the belief that power only belonged to those born to wield it. But the fight on Earth didn't just leave Vegeta bruised, it left him changed. He had lost more than a battle, he had lost the comfort of certainty. The hierarchy he believed in has crumbled. The power he worshipped had failed him. So when he left Earth, he didn't just leave with wounds, he left with questions. Questions that would follow him to the far edges of space, all the way to Namek.
I used to fight for the sheer pleasure of it, for the thrill of the hunt. Oh, I had the strength unmeasurable. I spared no one.
It was on Namek that we saw what might be the most exponential growth in the entire series, not just in strength, but in identity. Because in defeat, Vegeta learns, he adapts, he evolves. After his loss on Earth, something shifted. He learned to sense ki, his power surged, his tactics sharpened. No longer just a soldier of instinct, he became a strategist, wading beneath the water, striking from the shadows, even fighting alongside the very earthlings he once vowed to destroy. But most importantly, he stopped waiting for the story to happen around him. On Namek, Vegeta became the driving force, the hunter, the wild card, the storm that moved the plot forward. Every choice he made reshaped the battlefield. The scheming, the killing, the betrayal. They weren't just moves on a chessboard, they were choices, desperate, calculated, necessary, but not without weight. And that weight broke him at the end. Because as Vegeta clawed his way through Namek, he wasn't just chasing Dragon Balls or survival anymore. He was chasing a prophecy, the Super Saiyan. A warrior of legend, a force powerful enough to destroy Frieza, a title Vegeta believed belonged to him, had to belong to him. He fought like it was destiny, he spoke like it was already true. But when Goku arrived, when Goku stood against the Ginyu Force and against Frieza, Vegeta saw something that shook him to the core. That maybe it wasn't him after all. He wasn't the Super Saiyan, Kakarot was. And in that desperation, when facing against Frieza, Vegeta did the unthinkable. He begged Krillin to nearly kill him. Because in his mind, a near-death experience could grant him the Zenkai boost to finally close the gap, and might finally awaken the power he had been promised since birth. This wasn't ambition anymore, this was obsession, a man willing to gamble his life for the chance to prove himself. But when Frieza revealed his final form and Vegeta stood against him, reality came crashing down, and in that moment, the prince who had lived his entire life believing in superiority felt something he couldn't rationalize, doubt. It wasn't just his body that was broken, it was the idea of who he was meant to be. And when Frieza struck him down, slowly, Vegeta didn't die with pride, he died pleading for Kakarot to defeat the tyrant he never could, to avenge not just him, but the entire Saiyan race. His final act wasn't a roar, it was a confession, a fear, a failure, a faith in someone else. And then for the first time in his life, Vegeta cried. Not when his father was killed, not when his planet was destroyed, not when he was made a slave by Frieza, the monster who took everything from him. No, Vegeta had buried those tears deep. He buried them under pride, under power. He convinced himself that pain made him stronger, but as he lay dying on Namek, as the final breath left his body, he let it all go. He wept, not for himself, but for what had been stolen from him since birth, his freedom, his people, his future. He wept for the child who never got to be a child, for the warrior who was never given a choice, for the prince who was forced to become a tool. And he didn't cry alone. He cried in front of Goku, the man he once called a disgrace to their race. And yet, now, he entrusted him with everything. He begged Goku to fight, not just for justice, but for vengeance. Not just to win, but to avenge. Because in that moment, Vegeta didn't just hand over the battle, he handed over his pride.
Vegeta? I guess it's a good thing I didn't bury you that deep after all.
Well. Kakarot, you dog! You did it! You actually did it! You're a Super Saiyan! I can see it!
Through the cracked surface of a broken world buried in dust, he claws his way out. From the ashes, Vegeta rises, and what he sees defies reason. Two warriors clashing at speeds beyond comprehension. Vegeta approaches the battlefield and then he sees it. That golden light, that unmistakable aura, and although this is a filler scene, it is one of my favorite Goku and Vegeta interactions. We see the prideful warrior acknowledging Goku face to face for the first time, not because Goku had surpassed him, but because the legend, the one Vegeta had staked his identity on, was real. The Super Saiyan wasn't just a myth, it wasn't a cruel lie told to keep him chained. It existed, and it was possible. And personally, I think this is where Vegeta's true arc begins. He no longer craved immortality. Immortality was just desperation, his escape from Frieza's grasp. But now, there was something greater to chase. Not survival, not revenge, but transformation. From this point on, everything in Vegeta's story becomes about one thing: reaching that same light, becoming the legend he saw with his very own eyes. And in a strange way, Goku didn't just defeat Frieza, he freed Vegeta as well, from the chains of fear, from the illusion of destiny, and in doing so, he gave him a new reason to fight. And this is one of the things that I appreciate about the character of Goku and Vegeta, and it's something that not a lot of people talk about.
Kakarot's success was like a demon in my head. How could he be a Super Saiyan when I, the Prince of all Saiyans, could not? Times I thought I was losing my mind. Why couldn't I obtain what Kakarot had obtained? It didn't make sense. It was infuriating, and it was my fury that kept me alive.
After Namek, something shifted in Vegeta. He had seen the impossible. The Super Saiyan, once thought to be a myth, stood in front of him in flesh and fury. And it wasn't him. That realization didn't break him, it redefined him. Because for the first time in his life, Vegeta wasn't chasing power to survive, he was chasing it to surpass. He didn't care about immortality anymore, that was Frieza's game. Vegeta wanted something else now, something far more personal. To unlock the same strength Kakarot had, to prove that he was still the elite, still the one destined to rise above all. But this wasn't just a training arc. This was an identity crisis, because the path to becoming a Super Saiyan wasn't just about raw power, it was about ownership, control, something Vegeta never had to learn until now. So what did he do? Inside a chamber where every step felt like lifting a mountain, he pushed his body beyond breaking, not only for survival, not only for glory, but to understand how Kakarot did it, to feel what it meant to rise above. And when he emerged from that chamber, he was different. Because something in that endless silence, something gave way, not his body, but his resistance, the anger, the obsession, the need to win, it all collapsed. And in that moment of surrender, he broke through. Vegeta became a Super Saiyan, not through rage, but through resignation, through a moment where he stopped trying to become one. The title that once belonged to legends now belonged to him, and for a moment that changed everything. On Namek, Vegeta had been a tactician, outmatched but never outwitted, every move calculated, every risk taken with intent. But that side of him faded the moment he saw his reflection in gold. Now, he didn't need strategy, he had power. He dismantled Android 19 like it was nothing, mocked his enemies, and even taunted his allies. He wasn't chasing Kakarot anymore, he believed he had surpassed him. He believed he had won, but pride like that is brittle, and the universe never lets illusion last for long. Stronger androids appear, androids immune to fear. In fact, Vegeta becomes too much over his head that he doesn't want to hear Kakarot's name. He punches his son at the name of Goku alone. His arrogance, his belligerence have magnified just as much as his power did, so when facing with the real threat, Vegeta was quickly humbled. And despite Vegeta being defeated, this is where I think the strength of his character lies. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it's not his prideful speeches or power-ups that defined him, it's the quiet moments. Moments like this, where he stands alone in the rain, staring up at a sky that never answered him, and in that silence, he tells me, you, and everyone watching that defeat is part of the journey, and what we learn from those defeats is what truly defines us. Vegeta gives his epic speech, one of my personal favorite moments of his character arc.
A true Super Saiyan would not have fallen. Maybe I'm not who I think I am. Perhaps there are still new plateaus for me to reach, far greater heights to which I must ascend. Yes! I will ascend! The universe will marvel to see the ultimate Saiyan potential once again realized. And then, Kakarot, then I will see you bow before your prince.
As a kid watching this man talking about his strength, his pride, and becoming the person he wants to be, it meant something. And it still means something. For many of us, it was more than just an anime. Vegeta was a symbol, a drive, a masculine force that is slowly being forgotten in today's world. He stood for days on that cliff, alone, haunted by the reality that even his legendary power wasn't enough. And in that silence, he made a choice. He didn't drown in the weight of his failure. He talked himself out of depression, out of bitterness, out of the spiral. And do you know what the craziest part is? As far as we know, there was nothing beyond Super Saiyan. No proof, no roadmap, but he chased it anyways, because that is who Vegeta is. However, when the day finally came, the day Cell's perfect form challenged the world, Vegeta stood ready. He had thrown himself into the void again, searching for that next level, pushing past what even a Super Saiyan was meant to be. But the world no longer revolved around him. He was no longer the main player. Goku had surpassed him yet again, and now, Gohan has surpassed them both. Vegeta, the proud warrior who once declared himself the strongest in the universe, was pushed to the sidelines, left to watch as the next generation took the stage. And then, Goku sacrificed himself, without hesitation, without fear. He gave his life to protect everyone, including Vegeta. And Vegeta could only watch. But the cruelty of fate didn't stop there. Just when it seemed Goku's sacrifices ended the nightmare, Cell returned. And then, he struck Trunks. And in that moment, the floodgates opened. Years of buried emotion, pride, and denial, all crashing down at once.
How could I let this happen to my son? He has sacrificed everything for me, and I have done nothing but ignore him. I won't give up on him. There is still time to change things. Cell has crossed me for the last time. He has tricked me in battle, mocked my Saiyan ancestry, but this time he's gone too far. He will pay the ultimate price for what he has done to my son.
And in that moment, in that very exact moment, Cell had taken everything from him. Not when Cell mocked his pride, not when he humiliated him in a battle, but when he crossed the one line Vegeta didn't know he had. He hurt his own son, the same son Vegeta had pushed away, ignored, dismissed. Trunks came from the future hoping to fight beside his father, hoping to know him, and Vegeta never let him in. And now, in a flash of light, that chance was gone, and in that silence, something shattered. It wasn't just pain, it wasn't just rage, it was a realization, and something cracked. Not his pride, not his ego, but the wall he had built around his heart. For the first time ever, Vegeta didn't feel like a warrior, he felt like a father. And from the wreckage of that failure, he exploded, with rage, with grief, with a fury no title could ever contain. This wasn't a fight, this was personal. Though his attack didn't bring Cell down, that wasn't the point, because in that moment, Vegeta made a choice. The prideful warrior who once believed emotions were a weakness acted out of love. He stood between death and his son, and that meant more than any victory ever could. Now compare that to how we spoke of Vegeta in the beginning of the video, and you will realize how far Vegeta has come. Also, I'm sure many of you watching this moment not as kids but as adults who have children of their own, this moment hits very different. Because even when Vegeta's down and facing the executioner Cell who looks down on him, Vegeta was saved. He was saved by Gohan, who sacrificed one of his arms to keep Vegeta alive. The same boy who had every reason to resent him, but still chose to protect him. For the first time ever, Vegeta apologized. Not to Kakarot, not to the world, but to Gohan, a boy who should have never had to carry this burden, a child who was thrown into war, just like Vegeta had been. That's what he saw in him, not just strength, but stolen innocence. And for someone like Vegeta who once took pride in making Gohan bleed, to now bow his head and say sorry? For me, and I might be reaching here, but there's always been this quiet, unspoken relationship between Vegeta and Gohan, something that doesn't need to be said out loud, but it's always been there. They went through hell together on Namek, and even then, Vegeta showed some level of respect he rarely gave anyone, that never really changed. In the Buu Saga, when Gohan fell short, Vegeta wasn't just disappointed, he was angry. Not because Gohan was weak, but because he expected more from him. Even in Dragon Ball Super, Vegeta acknowledges that Gohan has the potential to be the strongest of them all. Because in Gohan, Vegeta saw something familiar. A child thrown into battle, molded by war, and forced to grow up too fast. Just like him. And maybe that is why, in the final stand against Cell, when all seemed lost, Vegeta did something he never would have done before. He let go of his pride. For Gohan, and for everyone else, Vegeta delivers what I think is the greatest assist in anime history, hitting Cell from behind and providing the necessary opening for Gohan to win. While Gohan overcame Cell that moment, Vegeta overcame something far more greater. Himself. And in himself is when he lost his old identity, only to gain a new perspective. Above the rubble of the battlefield, Vegeta hovers in silence, motionless. The war is over, Cell is gone, and the world is safe. But Kakarot isn't. And that is when we see it. Not rage, not defiance, not even arrogance, but mourning. Vegeta, the proud prince of all Saiyans, simply stares into the distance, and for the first time he allows himself to feel the loss. For years his identity had been forged in the fire of a single pursuit, to surpass the man who unknowingly gave his pain direction. Goku wasn't just a rival, he was the measure of Vegeta's worth, the one obstacle that justified his pride and his shame. And now that obstacle was gone, leaving behind a silence even victory couldn't fell. He didn't find peace that day, he didn't find clarity, but he did find the one thing he'd spent his whole life running from, the truth. And maybe that is why years later, when the chance to feel whole came again, even if it meant falling under a spell, he took it. Because if you truly want to understand Majin Vegeta, you have to understand this first. This is where the mask first started to crack. This is where the prince began to reshape. Vegeta is more than the angry warrior with a tragic past. He is a man sculpted with pain, pride, love, and loss. Layer by layer, moment by moment, every time he fell, every time he got back up, it meant something. Behind that cold stare is a man who's constantly at war, not just with others, but with himself. And it's in that struggle, in that quiet storm inside of him, where the brilliance of Akira Toriyama's writing truly lives. Vegeta is a testament to how even the most hardened souls can change, not overnight, but inch by inch, scar by scar. And his relationship with Goku always shines the brightest in Dragon Ball Z, not in Super, even though they're always together, even though they're always training, developing, getting more transformations. No, it is Akira Toriyama who fully understood this character, and he created one of the greatest anti-heroes of all time.
He has beaten me completely. First by his own actions, and then through his sons. And what has he left for me here? How could you die like that? How, Kakarot? I'll never have the chance to prove my strength against you. You died without fear. What does that make of me? I am no warrior, and I will never fight again. Meaningless, huh? What do you know of meaningless? Spend most of your life ruled by another. Watch your race dwindle to a handful. And then, tell me what has more meaning than your own strength.
Vegeta's story is more than a tale of strength. It's a story of struggle, of failure, of growth. It's about a man who was raised to conquer, but slowly learned what it meant to protect. A man who believed his worth was tied to power, only to realize his greatest battle was always within. Through pain, through pride, through countless defeats, he kept moving forward. And in that journey, in that messy, raw, and imperfect journey, we see something profoundly human. Because truthfully, We all carry a bit of Vegeta inside of us, that voice that tells us we're not enough, that pride that hides our pain, that fire that pushes us to prove ourselves, even when no one's watching. And just like him, we break, we fall, we question who we are. But in those moments, when we feel lost or left behind, Vegeta teaches us something powerful, that change is possible, that redemption is earned, and that even the most stubborn hearts can find peace. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes him one of the greatest characters ever written. Thank you so much for watching. I've always wanted to make a video for Vegeta and appreciate the true brilliance of his character. If this video meant something to you just like it did for me, then please drop a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Just comment anything you'd like, whether you agree or disagree. And if you're new here or old, I've got other videos you might enjoy too. They're different from this one, but they're just as passionate in their own way. And who knows, if enough of you want it, maybe one day we'll dive into the story that all of this was leading to. Majin Vegeta, the greatest character arc of Vegeta. But for now, please support the video and give it a like. And other than that, I hope you guys have a nice day. Peace.